Hi everyone, welcome to the panel. I'm so glad that you guys all can make it today. Thank you so much. So I'm sure you guys all heard your introductions, but why don't everyone introduce themselves again? Please share your name, your hometown, and one fun fact about yourself. So we can do by alphabetical order. So Baoying can lead the way.
Awesome. Hey, everyone, and thanks, Melissa, for the introduction. My name is Baoying Tong. I grew up in China, in a small city near North Korea. And for my undergrad, I moved to Australia. And after I finished my bachelor in engineering, I decided to stay a bit longer. And that's why in the past 9 years, I was working in Sydney. And now, second year MBA at Wharton School. Before, my background was in engineering, public policy, and now trying to enter into a venture capital and have been doing some good works with two of the global venture funds in the space. So that's about me, and really excited to join this panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Baoying. Isabella?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Isabella Robello and I am from Managua, Nicaragua. I'm a student at the University of Pennsylvania and my current plan is to major in psychology and do a double minor in economics and consumer psychology. And one weird but fun fact about me is that I normally see my phone at night with only one eye because I have a lazy eye.
Interesting fun fact. Lucia?
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm from Slovakia, which is a small country in Central Europe, where I also study business administration. At the moment, I work in a venture capital fund, but before I work in some startups, so my professional background is mostly in design and marketing. And the fun fact is that I like uncomfortable sports. So I like running half marathons or swimming in the winter. Like an hour ago, I went swimming in the lake and it's like 5 degrees Celsius outside. So yeah, that's me.
Got to get that cold plunge, the benefits of cold water, right? Yeah. All right, last but not least, Hannah.
Hi, everyone. Melissa, thank you so much for the thorough introduction. I'm also a student at the University of Pennsylvania, intending to major in possibly international relations or economics. And I am a huge fan of creative writing, always have been. I really love what the poetry, fiction, personal narratives, you name it. And a fun fact is that during COVID, I actually tried to take it upon myself to learn American Sign Language, and I still haven't mastered it. I am a beginner, though.
That's really cool. Yeah, one of my bucket lists is also to learn ASL. All right, so let's dive into the questions. We can do the same order. You guys can just feel free to unmute. But let's go around and can everyone give a quick introduction about the team that they mentored and the most memorable experience you had with your team? So feel free to just popcorn or just unmute or do whatever order you guys would like.
I'm happy to go first again. So my team is Luna, and it's an all-girls team. So I have 5 students from Malaysia, and the product they're trying to build is in cosmetics. It's about lip scrub. And to be very honest, I didn't know anything about lip scrub at the very beginning, but at the end, I feel, maybe I know a little bit about it now. And for me, like one of the most memorable, I guess, moment with the team is really after they tested the different formulas with the product and realized, this is the best formula. And we did some cost analysis. And then they told me how much was the gross margin with the product. And given that they don't really pay salary to each other, that's why I was thinking, wow, this is a really good profit. And that's the moment I feel, wow, this is it is going somewhere.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's very touching to see an idea transform into having growth margins, which is a very big jump. Yeah.
So then my group, I actually mentored 2 different groups at 2 different times. So my first group was interested in pursuing an entrepreneurship project in stationery. But I was then assigned to a second group called I Heart Studio, and their project was based on selling personalized tote bags. And they were very successful, and I really enjoyed mentoring them because like one of the most memorable experiences that I had with them was like this with the second team, the day that I got to meet all of them and their projects were already started. But like I honestly didn't expect much progress. But I was certainly left impressed with their hard work and how they had been selling their products in their free time, like to their community. And this really showed their high commitment to the competition and was really rewarding to me as a mentor.
Awesome.
Great. So my team, Extreme Designers, work on founding their own student marketing agency. It was fun because myself, I have a background in design and marketing. So I actually like struggled to give them honest feedback because I didn't want to be harsh and negative. So that was like the biggest struggle for me to like be actually critical to active young students. But during the program we worked on making their design and their internal processes more professional, standardized, and consistent. So in the end they put together a brand manual for their company and actually presented this brand manual at some like big event at their school, and by doing that they achieved to gain the new clients and for their like local student activities and communities to actually come to them and say that they want to use their studio. So that was great.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad that you guys had overlapping interests.
My team, their name was Forever Five, and it was actually right up my alley because their whole goal was to sell an ebook, an online book that they created, and it was a cartoon book and a novel. They were working on two projects simultaneously, and uh, because it was writing based, a lot of it in terms of creating the product, progress wasn't could it was kind of difficult to measure progress initially.
Mhm.
Um, but they were very interested in selling their work, which they were very passionate about. So I presented the idea that we can create a website to market your products to sell them. And that was what the whole premise of what we were working on was.
That's awesome. Yeah, having that technology namespace is really important for any product as well. Great. So the next question that we have was what was the most unexpected experience that happened with your team, and like whether good or bad, like how did you combat that issue, or how did you make that good experience more sustained in the long run? Baoying, feel free to start us off.
For sure, hey, for sure. Okay, I'll probably sharing something slightly on the negative side and how like as a team we improve it. Um, so I remember that we when we started in July, we decided that we're gonna run those weekly catch ups, and for me that's gonna be late night on Saturday. And what I realized is gradually my team, some of students they started to dropping off from the weekly calls. And that's the point. I was thinking, oh, like everyone needs to be equally committed. And the way we move forward is I mentioned my expectation that I'm committed, and you guys should also be perhaps be more committed than me. And then I realized that it's not because students just forgot. It's actually because they have some really good reasons for missing out. So, for example, they may have some very tough exams they have to prepare, and some students they have to not only worry about studying this program, but also need to help their families with some stuff. And once they explained it, like that makes perfect sense to me. And that's why I said it's perfectly fine as long as you give me the heads up and let them know beforehand. That'll be totally fine. And that's how we did it. And I really appreciate the consistency and also commitment by my team. And eventually we work out a really good pattern. And at the end, even though like sometimes some students may have other things happening on their side, they let me know early, and eventually we still make good discussions just with part of the team.
That's awesome. Yeah, communication I think is definitely like key to having that global team, especially to like work out because you guys are all in different time zones as well.
Yeah, and I guess just building upon that is like when I was in high school, in middle school, I knew that study was a big thing. The exams was what really stressed me a lot, and that's why when explained that it just makes perfect sense. And my recommendation to them is really you should prioritize your exam first before you making working hard on other things. And I'm just glad that my team they really learned from process and knows how to best prioritize their time.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like my weeks are centered. I don't know if Isabella, Hannah, you guys feel this way, but whenever there's a test like coming up, I'm like centering my week around that one test, and like, yeah, maybe I'll skip this club meeting here or there, but yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, do any of like Lucia, Hannah, Isabella, is there any other unexpected experience that happened with your team, and would you like to share that?
I can maybe continue. For me, it was, as I mentioned, like I was surprised that I was unable to give negative feedback because I like worked with multiple different types of people and organizations before. But just in this moment, as I was mentoring kids that were younger than me, and I really liked that they were passionate about their project, I felt really bad telling them week after week that the design still isn't what it's supposed to be. So I did that by like comparing the things that they did to like some professional brand manual. So I didn't want it to tell them directly like this is not the best, but I said and showed them like the brand manual of Spotify and like big companies, and like showed them like this is what it should look like more, and that's how I managed that.
That's actually a great way to give like feedback, like, using another example that's already like successful, but like still have like struggles that they as a company went through. And that's a really good way of doing that. Yeah. Isabella, do you have anything?
Yeah, so like for me it was like a little bit different because like as I mentioned before, I mentored like these two different groups. So like I had been working for almost like 1 month with my first group, and like suddenly they just like stopped coming to the meetings and eventually like answering in the group chats. So that was like kind of a challenge. And like this was somewhat like frustrating, but like I immediately reached out to like one of the advisors, and together like we started working on a plan. So then like I wrote to the leader of the group and like continuously like encouraged all of them to continue with their projects. But like once this was done and unfortunately like it wasn't working, I kept like in contact with the officers, and then I was reassigned to another group. So for me it was definitely like the challenge was like the commitment that some of like the students had at some point, but then like I was transferred to this second group and they were like totally committed to their projects. So like at the same time it was like super rewarding for me in the end.
Yeah, I like how you had that like contrasting experience, because like you have one experience like not really dedicated, but the tote bag company seems to like have like they are interested in enhancing their product. So I'm glad you had that second experience.
Yes.
I would also say that my difficulties or challenges kind of were also in the communication aspect, but a little different. In terms of cultural background, I think that played a role, especially because this was one of my first times interacting with students who were um, who were currently living or residing in a different part of the world. It took me some time to adjust to how they communicated information or how they learned information. For instance, like I know in the US, it's very normal to be very outspoken and to simply just ask questions and be like, hey, I don't know what this means, explain, or advocate for yourself. But a lot of times I found that when I would explain something, I received no response, and it was very difficult to read what they were thinking. And if they even understood what I was saying or how they felt about the current progress we were making. And I found understanding that the fact that they learn a little differently, that was a very big learning curve for me. But surprisingly though, in the beginning of when we started our journey together, I didn't want to dive immediately like deep into like the professional aspect. I didn't want to be like, I'm a mentor, I'm here to mentor you, we're gonna get this started. But I did take some time to get to learn more about them. And I think a great part was I got to learn more about their future aspirations, like about how one of them want to be a firefighter, how one of them want to do this when they grow up. And we were just kind of having some talks about life that were not related to the business, but it was very helpful in me understanding who they are as a person.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's like a perfect segue for like our next question of like working with global teams. I know like Hannah, you talked about like how there's a lot of cultural differences between like maybe people who grew up here compared to like from all the way across the other world. I guess working in your teams, like what were some of the challenges working with like students who were all the way from the other world? Were there a lot of cultural differences? Did you have to like communicate in a different way, or were the challenges of that?
Right.
I can start.
Go for it. Thanks, Lucia.
Great. So for me, the biggest difference was the difference in opportunities that are in Central Europe versus in the other region. So, like for example, in the past, when I mentored teams in Central Europe, like I could get really concrete advice, like go to this incubator and use this co-working spaces because they will give you this spaces for free because you're a student. And I could give like really, really concrete goals and advice. But I realized that like the opportunities in Central Europe and in my region are different than the ones in the other region. So I gave them like more generalized advice. So I, for example, tell them like go work with your local nonprofits or local small businesses, and didn't give them like concrete ideas because I don't know the startup community and the venture capitals over there. But I generalized my advice just to fit the region better.
That's really great. Yeah, having that adaptability is really important. Baoying?
Okay, sure. For me, actually, the kind of like say the differences is more coming not from culture side, but more, I guess, from the age side. And I'll explain. Like culture-wise, because I grew up in China and I knew that the Asian culture where exams so important, and that's why I totally understand. I totally understood like where it's coming from when they have different priorities. And also, when I was in Australia, I have quite a few friends from Malaysia, and that's why like culture-wise, it's not a big deal. I guess the real difference came in when it's about age, and I'll explain why. So in my past professional experience or like study experience, I mentored many people. Like right now, I'm mentoring students at Wharton/Penn, and previously University of Sydney, and also junior engineers in my workplace. But this time was actually the first time I mentored someone who's in mid school, high school, and really for me, I try to speak their language, try to understand. Oh, am I talking too much? Should I like stop and see if they have already digested what I mean? So there's, I guess, some frictions that I need to manage from the very beginning. But I would say probably after the first 2-3 conversations, I realized that, oh, this is a team dynamics, and this is probably the best way for me to communicate with my team. And that's how I actually learned a lot from just mentoring the team.
Awesome. Yeah, I think having an extensive mentoring experience definitely helped translate that to be more flexible, even when you're like mentoring kids in Malaysia.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, it was like a little bit similar to Lucia's case. Definitely, like I really enjoyed like working with like all the children, but like at some point the communication was like a little bit hard because most of them like they wouldn't speak English or were not proficient in English. And so they started like speaking or like typing in their own language, and I was like, I needed Google Translate in that moment to like see what they were discussing. But like I definitely like really enjoyed like working with them, and at the same time like we go in as mentors like to help them, but we also like end up learning like so much from them and like their culture and where they live in their communities. So it was like a really nice interaction between like the project itself and like our personal lives.
Yeah, I think it's really beneficial being a mentor because you not only get to like become like friends with them, but you get to see them grow like professionally as well, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, but thank God for Google Translate because that's to be helpful in life. Yeah. Hannah, I know you talked about this a little bit in your previous response, but like how did like being able to communicate with them better help you like work better as a team?
I would also say that there were language barriers, but more so it was just because they didn't feel as confident as they should have felt in their English. Whereas where they were speaking English and I could understand them, but they're a lot of times they're like, "Oh, we don't speak that well," or "Oh, I don't know how to say this." And I was like, "You do. You're just not confident enough." And I felt that was a common pattern I noticed. A lot of times these students didn't feel confident enough to express themselves or speak in English or um, just take risks. And that was definitely a big difference for me in terms of mentoring these students and understanding, like, again, like, how do they learn? How would they communicate? And how do I know that they're actually understanding the information I'm sharing? But it was a great learning experience for me in the sense that it definitely taught me a lot of patience because I expected our progress to be, like, skyrocketing, like, the first week, but, it wasn't like that. Reality was it was very difficult to get the whole project started initially, and so, um, then again, like, learning about their backgrounds more, learning about them as a person before even trying to mentor them, and, like, learning about how they learn is very important before you even try to teach them anything.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, how your whole like learning, teaching them how to like, be more confident is like such a skill in entrepreneurship and being like able to hone in on their abilities rather their like shortcomings. Yeah, definitely agree. Um, so for those of you who like worked in more like teams, I'm guessing all of you guys worked in teams of more than like 3 to 4. Like, did you see like the benefits of collaboration in entrepreneurship? Like, I know that a lot of you guys have like individual entrepreneurship endeavors or maybe duos. But what were the benefits of your experience like watching this team grow together and having a very like collaborative environment instead of like individual entrepreneurs?
So I can start. So like I definitely did see benefits like of entrepreneurship collaboration. And like there's this famous saying that says like two heads think better than one.
Yes.
And like I think this was definitely the case because like sometimes people are better like in the artistic aspect of the project while others are better like with numbers and keeping the finances of the business. So like working in groups is a must, and it also like builds on communication skills that like I believe are really important in the business world. And so like students divided their work like between like what they were good at, and this is what made like the project um really like really good and part of like the competition.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like specializing in what you are the best at is the best way to make the team the most efficient as possible. Yeah.
For me personally, in the beginning, I felt like a school teacher during COVID in a Zoom lesson with like a big group of people who didn't have their camera on. And the group dynamic like wasn't there, so that was the beginning. But like after some time you could see like the leader of the group naturally come through and communicate with me. So after that, and after like knowing who's the most active in the organization and like how should I communicate with them, it started working when I like knew like these people are the introverts of the group and this is like the most active person. So when you have like this like actually hierarchy in the organization, then I could actually like work with them when it was defined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's always nice to have like teams have like there's usually one outspoken person and then there's like some that are less quiet, but you gotta dig deep into those quiet ones to get out the information. But yeah, figuring communication styles are really important as well. Baoying?
Great. I know that it may sound a bit surface level, very superficial if I say collaboration is critical. But in real life, like so just looking at the venture side, I've seen how a great idea, great founder tried to scale, but didn't really, it's like not very good at building a team. That's why like the idea failed. And also I saw that how four founders are trying to tackle a massive problem and a few years after, because it worked so well, collaborating with all different teams. And now they are about to IPO at 10 billion plus valuation. So I see it in real life. I see like how collaboration affects the fate of different startups. And in this case, I guess putting that into more, I guess, a like school project context, I think what is quite important for like for students to understand is actually how do you collaborate with your friends in a real tangible project. And everyone make a team, and when I talked to them, I knew that they actually knew each other for a long time. They're great friends. But then the problem becomes, you are all good friends, but how do you still talk in business terms when you're actually not friends anymore, but actually talking as co-founders? And yes, you start assigning people roles from the beginning, who's CTO, who is the CFO, etc. They're all like very exciting titles. But as the project goes on, you start realizing that, oh, actually different people have different commitments to their family business. They may struggle with these upcoming exams, and that's why you realize that the playground is not leveled. Actually, different people have different commitment. Then how do you approach individually with your teammates who are best friends with you, but also tell them, hey, maybe it's time for you to put in more effort because all others are committed. And I think that is an interesting thing that I try to teach my team, i.e., friendship is great, but also think about how can you get collaborate as real, co-workers instead of just friends.
Yeah, I always think it's a tricky balance when you go into business with friends. It's like not that I have like experience like having some friendship business, but I can like understand that it's like it's gonna be more tricky managing the logistics or being like, hey, like what role do you want to be when when you guys are all planning out the roles and tasks, and delegating that is definitely like a fine line for sure. Hannah?
Yeah, I think collaboration was a big idea that I emphasized a lot in our meetings, especially because I was actually impressed by the fact that they each designated a certain role to every member. And so when I was talking about completing a task, they were like, "Oh, that's this person. They know how to do that role best, so they should do that. You should contact them." And at first that was great until it started becoming like, "Oh, I won't do that work. They should do it." Because they're the ones responsible for that. And that was when I was like, "Hey, but that's not, I know you have your respective roles, but it's okay to overstep that sometimes and help out a teammate, even especially when you know that they can't complete it in that time or that period. It's always nice to lend a hand." And at first, I guess they didn't really understand that because they're like, "Oh, but this is what we're supposed to do." They actually they sent me a paper document, like an image of each person, the group member, the position, and then they bulleted 5 tasks that every person was responsible for, and then they would, like, point out, "That falls onto this person." And at first, I thought it was cute, but, I had to teach them how to, like, collaborate beyond just those 5 tasks for each person.
Yeah, I know like previously we talked about like every person specializing in one thing is really helpful for the team, but like only fixed specialization can be counterproductive at times when like, people's schedules don't always perfectly line up. So yeah, thank you for those insights. So moving on to our next question. I would love to hear like any piece of advice that you all have for future teams slash mentees, and maybe a piece of advice for future mentors as well.
So for the future teams, like I would advise to like always start with different potential ideas that they like for their business, because like sometimes once the teams start with only one idea, it's hard to open to new proposals that could work like better in their communities. So I believe it's important to have like an open mind at the initial proposal like might change, and like just like be open about that. And then for future mentors, based on my personal experience, one of the best advices that I can give to any mentor in this competition would be like to be persistent and showing up for their teams. Even if your team is like not answering back and are lacking in some way, like to always like contact an officer and try to solve the issue. And like as mentors, we shouldn't just like give up when the student gives up. And instead, like we should try to find like solutions and never be afraid to like also ask for help. Because like we are the mentors like to these students, but we also have officers that are like the mentors to us, and like we should just like never doubt like contacting them for like any help that we need along the process.
Definitely agree. Yeah, reaching out is key.
I can jump in next. So I guess to future mentees, and I would say you care more about the process than the outcome, and that's the thing I told my team from the very beginning, and I try to anchor in every time we have conversation, and that is, this is your first time to try to launch something of your own as a team, and really like I want you to learn as much as possible from this process, then care about who wins the big prize. And really, worst case, you don't win this time. It's still fun. You learn tons, and that's why this morning I was so proud when my team texted me in the WhatsApp group saying that although we didn't win, but still we learned so much. And that's the moment I feel, oh, I'm so proud that they took my advice. And then on the advice to mentors, I think similar to what Isabella said, I think it's all about patience. Imagine. Think your mentees in their shoes, because they high school students, they have so many things to worry about, and they may not have the bandwidth as you to learn everything about product design, about marketing, about business operations, about execution, which is totally fine. They will have plenty of opportunities to learn them in the future when they go to college or in real life. But still, as a mentor, you should be patient and recognizing that there's a huge learning curve for the students to understand what's happening. And that's my advice to mentors.
Definitely agree with those pieces of advice. Thank you so much. Sia?
I can jump in. For the mentees, I would say it's good to be lazy and work smarter and not harder. Like a lot of time I see students with their projects do a lot of manual labor without actually checking, like, is there not a template for this, and doing everything themselves and not like doing the research before starting to work on an idea. And I think like doing a 5-minute Google search could save you so much time, and I see that in like so many student projects. So that's my piece of advice for them. And for the mentors, I would just say like it gets better. So yeah, in the beginning I felt really awkward in the Zoom call where nobody was responding to me, but after that, like I started communicating with my team and we had fun on the call, and I felt great when they actually like I saw the progress and they sent me the new brand manual and like shared their experiences with me and showed me the picture from the school presentation. Like, yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, seeing that progress is definitely
Yeah.
very, very touching. Yeah.
I actually want to start with advice for mentors because I want to echo what Baoying said about patience actually, because a lot of times when you hear these stories of like other teams, how much progress they made or how other mentors are doing, it's very easy to compare. It's very easy to be like, why is my team not like that? Or how come my team isn't making as much progress as I thought they would, or just like in comparison to other groups. And that can lead you down this whole spiral of like frustration. And when you approach these kids, especially students who probably this is their first time, even with like any startup really, when you approach them with this sense of like frustration, like you're not doing this, when you're just looking at everything that they're not doing, it's very unproductive. And it only creates this environment of I would say just nobody it's a very unproductive environment because nobody wants to change really. The students clearly don't know how to improve without you mentoring them first, and approaching them with that frustration initially is inefficient. So I would say patience, especially when it comes to seeing growth or trying to see growth in students. In terms of mentees though, I would say don't be afraid to ask any questions because the mentors don't know what you don't know. So we could be kind of spewing information, sharing information as much as we want, but I know that every mentee individually has things that they're interested in or things that they may not know or want to learn more about. And we will never know that if they never voice those certain interests. So always asking questions is a good sign.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. Definitely agree with your pieces of advice. I guess to flip the questions back on you, who are all of your greatest mentors or role models in your life, and what have you learned from them or those experiences?
So like my greatest mentor is like definitely my mother. And like she has been like a constant source of like inspiration and guidance throughout like my whole life. And from an early age, like I've looked up to her, like not only as a parent, but like as a role model who has like shaped the person I am today, basically. And like she has always like encouraged me to pursue like whatever I want to do. And like she has always like told me like not to settle for like mediocrity. And I think that this is like a very important lesson. And like her belief in my abilities has like definitely like boosted my self-confidence and like motivated me to like keep on like with whatever I want to do, and like just like take new opportunities that like arise during my studying.
That's awesome. Yeah, the power of having a supportive mom is everything.
Yeah.
For me, the easy answer would be like successful founders of businesses in Central Europe and Estonia, like Skype or Airbnb and stuff like that. That would be like an easy question. But the bigger and more honest and complex answer would probably like be like social activists and people like Nelson Mandela and Alexander Navalny, and people who didn't just build a business but actually like made an impact in the world and were actually like brave and stood up for something bigger. So that's something I would like to do in the future.
Yeah, social activists is also something I'm very passionate about.
I would say for me, it's also my parents. And I say that because it's in every aspect of life. Whether I have, like, whenever I have any minor inconvenience, I just call them because I just know that they'll provide the most honest advice because they are truly doing it out of good intention and they want what's best for me. And having that, being able to trust them in that way is such a significant it's such a significant thing that I often take for granted, but, being able to be upfront with them and telling them, "Hey, I'm going through something with this person or this activity or this something in school," and they're just always there to listen, but also, I would say the reason why I'm telling mentees to ask a lot of questions is because in high school, I had a teacher or I was always known as the 2 question girl in elementary school because I would always raise my hand and be like, "I have 2 questions, I have 2 questions." But, that ended up stopping when, a teacher in high school actually got mad at me, and she refused to answer a lot of my questions, and she became very frustrated, and she was like, "Why do you always ask so much?" Like, I don't I she go and she didn't want to answer any of them really, maybe because she didn't know them. But there was another teacher who stepped in and he helped me recover from that. And he helped me every time I had a question, he'd encourage me. And so seeing that was very helpful in terms of I guess building my character.
Yeah, I think having supportive teachers, and I think a lot about my experience as well in school. Like teachers have definitely shaped my perspectives on life and encouraging me to like step out of my bubble as well. Hannah, yeah.
And for me, like through my career, I think I benefited a lot from a lot of great mentors. And even today, I have active access conversations with my mentor in Australia. But still, like one person I want to shout out for is Professor Barry Webb, who sadly passed away last year. And he was my mentor for 9 years. So from the day I started at the University of Sydney for undergrad until like I left the country, he was my mentor. And for him, I guess there are so many things I can share about me and him and cautious about time. I think just sharing some very, I guess, very personal experience. He gave me the first professional job as a student lighting engineer, working with him on some of those most prominent jobs in Australia. And his background, he was an entrepreneur. He started his own very successful engineering consultancy in Australia. He was the person behind Sydney Olympics, lighting up the venue, the bodyboard, etc. Really prominent engineer. And if I look back at how I performed in my first internship with him, I would say very poorly. But he just gave me so much support. And he, like when I feel I struggled, he talked to me. He said, "Look, I had a very humble start when I started my career, and that's why if I could do it, you could do much better." And I guess one more example to share is I was keeping in touch with him the whole time. Even after the project. And I remember 2019, that was my first entrepreneurial experience with him. He said, "Baoying, I have a project I want to run, and I need you to help me to go with me to Hong Kong to meet hundreds of suppliers to help me to see who's the best person to do this deal with." And within like 3 days, we met like a few dozens of suppliers across the world. And initially, he was the one talking, and gradually he passed on to me to allow me to talk with those suppliers, future clients, etc. And that was my first, I guess, real exposure to entrepreneurship. And on that, I just feel I just learned so much from him.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I think having really important mentors is very important in everyone's life, and you've all done that for your teams this past summer, mentoring all of them. And I'm sure that when asked this question, they'll definitely think of all of you guys who are served as amazing, inspirational mentors. To end off our panel today with one final question, what social entrepreneurship topics are you personally interested in, and what makes you passionate about this field? Feel free to expand upon this question in any way that you guys would like.
I can jump in, and tomorrow I'll be moderating a panel discussion about global foundations on how it shapes entrepreneurship in the world. And that's why if you're listening and have time tomorrow, just join that conversation. That would be a really amazing conversation with some of those best global social entrepreneurs foundations in the space. So for me, I think it's about the global collaboration and also how private companies can do good while also making profit. So keep eyes open for the session tomorrow.
Yes, good shout out. I guess in that segue, I know, Lucia, you have a lot of experience working in both the public and private sectors. Like, could you talk more about that entrepreneurship experience?
Yeah, so for me, if I can continue, I really love like biotech and health tech innovations, but I'm far too stupid for that. I feel like so. I think it's like amazing to better the lives of everyday people. So I think like edtech innovations or like any form of innovations for the government that helps the services of the government is amazing, but it's honestly hard to do. So like for the past year, I've been developing an app for a Slovak ministry. Honestly, it's been really hard. On the other side, I'm developing a B2B app, and it's really fun to do like a B2B app on one side where the development is really fast, fun, and and great, and on the other side, like do an app for a Slovak ministry, which is still fun, but it's more hard to do when you actually like have to explain an app to like old people at the ministry and do user testing with them and explain to them how the software works. And yeah, it's administratively not that fun, but it's, I think, really important to do. So I think like education innovations are amazing, or anything that like actually helps people every day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Lucia. It's so impressive that you have such expansive experience. Love to hear more about it in the future.
And like for me, I'm personally super interested in like youth development programs, because like I've always wanted to work with children, like when I graduate. So like being a mentor in the program like really reinforced like my passion for helping young people like reach like their full potential and like ultimately like make a positive impact in their lives. And so like I would really like to like establish like an organization focused on like supporting like special needs children or like children in general, because I think that this initiative would aim to like provide like the resources and specialized education to them. And this is something that is really lacking back in Nicaragua, because not many places are open for children like with disabilities, so they have like a limited education. And also like there are no programs that like foment this type of entrepreneurship skills like to young children. They're not like that, don't have the resources for it. So I really enjoyed this program and got like many ideas for something that like I could do back at home to like help all these children.
Wow, it's awesome that you can like implement and carry on these ideas into your hometown. Yeah. And studying psychology definitely helps with that. So
It does.
Similar to Isabella, I think I'm also interested in working with children, or actually, I never saw myself as someone who would want to work with children. But I do think that I am passionate about education, the education sector, and improving ways to make education more efficient or productive in the classroom. But aside from that, I'm also really interested in just alleviating world poverty, because I just think that it's an issue everywhere you go in the world. You'll see it, obviously, you'll see it to a different extent depending on your location, but it is something that money is something that affects almost everyone, if not all. So I would like to make products like, for example, beauty products more affordable for a lot of people who can't or don't have access to like $60 lotions or anything like that.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know Baoying mentored a lip scrub startup. So maybe Baoying can share the contact info from your team.
I know, I can see some financial synergy, right? So
I'd love to.
Okay, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to talk about your experience engaging in the Teenage Entrepreneur Challenge and serving as very inspirational and dedicated mentors to your teams. So thank you so much for tuning in today for this panel. And yeah, see you guys all later.
right, thanks, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.